enough. All right. How's it going, everybody? I'm Chris. Justice gave me a fantastic introduction, so I'll roll with that. So tonight what I want to talk about is traction, early stage customer acquisition, and kind of how to find your growth engine, what's really going to propel companies forward. So I like to start with definitions, so we're all on the same page for what we're talking about. So Naval Ravikant, the CEO and founder of AngelList, defines traction as qualitative evidence of customer demand. So basically meaning, what are some metrics that you can use to tell whether or not people are engaged with your product, that they like what you're doing, and that you have the opportunity to grow. And so if you're a service business and you're selling a product, are people buying it? What's your revenue? How much are you making? If you're an app like Twitter, how many downloads do you have? What's the user engagement? Things like that. So figuring out how you can actually measure these things as opposed to just, this hope marketing where you put something out, you see if people do it, you're like, I guess this was good, maybe it wasn't. You're not basing it on anything. You don't have numbers to prove whether or not something's working. So kind of the big fallacy that's ubiquitous all over is the idea that if you build it, they will come, and that's just simply not the case. It's this idea that the product should speak for itself, the product should be good enough, and it's like going on a first date in, ripped t-shirt and jeans, and you're like, well, my personality should speak for itself. No, you have to show why you're attractive, why somebody would want to engage with you. What is the benefit for them? Because for you, the product can seem, or the company can seem like it's your whole life. It's super important, but that's not the way it is for customers. So a good formula for thinking about this when you're trying to think of how to pitch it to somebody is like their life plus your product. Like, what does their life look like now without your product? What does it look like with your product? And it's not going to be they're using it every day or all day, every day. It might be, but for most things, it's probably not going to be that. So how does that fit into their life? Where is it on kind of the priorities of things they do? And understanding the way people are going to interact with it can help you really define and then market to that. So again, building the right product for the right people. So knowing your customer, starting with your customer, being customer focused, and knowing where they hang out, what are the things they like to do, who are they reading, who are they following, what are they doing when they're not interacting with your product or a competitor's product, what are the things they do on the weekends, what's their family like, really breaking down and having a very, very clear avatar of who your ideal customer is. And obviously, not all your customers are going to be like that, but you should know who, if you could have any customer in the world, what does that person look like? So tonight's talk is about determining the growth engine. So Peter Thiel, as I'm sure most people know, author of 0 to 1, one of the first investors in Facebook, a big deal. He says that most companies are going to have one method of growth that is going to be vastly superior to everything else. So it could be, email marketing, or it could be doing podcasts, or it could be going to trade shows, or speaking at conferences, or a million different things. But usually one thing is going to outperform by a large majority everything else that you're trying. So you really, the goal with finding your growth engine, finding what is going to give you traction, improve you in the market, is about identifying this one specific thing that's going to help you propel you forward. And so tonight I want to kind of talk about how you can figure those things out. So starting with the basics, you want to test your assumptions, and you need to have assumptions to test. So kind of an example of this is recently I was on a phone call with a potential client, and we were talking about, I was trying to help her. It was the introductory call, see if it would make sense for us to work together, what her goals were. So she has an online course, and so I was talking to her. I'm like, okay, so you have this coming up. What do you want to do? What are your plans with it? And she said, well, we already have 100 blog posts already written, and we recorded 34 episodes of a podcast, and we want to, be mentioned by influencers. We want to get into schools and do these talks. And she starts talking about all these different tactics, and then I ask her, okay, and what is the goal with this? And she goes, well, we want it to do well. We want it to do well. That was the term that she used, and then it took, round after round of questioning to really nail down what did she specifically want? What did success look like to her? Because depending on what your goal is, whether it's brand recognition, it's like dollars and cents, how much you're selling, it's how many customers you have that you can later upsell to a different product. You need to know specifically, what numbers you're trying to hit for these different things, because once you know that and you kind of begin with the end in mind, then everything is going towards that. But if you don't know where you're trying to get through to, it's really difficult to make a journey that's going to get you there, because if you know you want to hit X dollars in sales, then a lot of the methods aren't going to get you there. So it really helps you narrow your focus, and by having that constraint, it can actually give you a lot of freedom. So stop being scared of your customers. Another thing a lot of people want to do is they just want to automate everything, and they want it to be passive, and they don't have to engage, and they can sit at their house or sit in their man cave and build this on their computer and never talk to anybody and just, grow $1 billion company. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of automation. I make part of my living by building automated systems for people, but people need to get over this fear of talking with people in real life and engaging one-on-one, because especially, the theme of this is, napkin stage startups, like really early startups. Especially when you're starting out, you think you know everything about the customer, their wants, their needs, their hopes, but all of this is just coming from inside you, and you're clearly biased because you're the one creating the product. So by going out and talking to people and asking them specific questions and seeing not just whether they like the idea or not, but what parts of the idea do they like, and what are the words that they use to describe their problem. And you get all of this wealth of information that you would never be able to just come up with on your own when you're sitting alone in your apartment trying to put these pieces together. And by getting that level of detail, which is something that almost nobody does, then you can target all of your modes of traction, whether it's email marketing or it's going and doing talks. You can speak directly to that person, and they get to the point where they're sitting in the audience or they're reading your email and they go, oh my God, it's like this person is reading my mind. This is exactly what I wake up with. And this is exactly the thought, like the words that I use to describe my problem. Because think of something where nobody uses the phrase oh, I am very overwhelmed. And so don't say that. They're going to say something like, oh, I just can't do this, I'm too busy. And don't say I'm overwhelmed. So figuring out what is actually the phraseology that they use, and you can speak to that. And that's what separates just the amateurs from the people that are going to be 10xing everybody else. So the bullseye strategy, and I actually got this from a friend of mine who wrote a book called Traction, Justin Mars, and he self-published it, and it did so well that now it's getting re-released by Penguin, and it comes out in October, so you should all pre-order that book because it's fantastic. But he talks about the bullseye strategy, and this is a way for identifying what methods of traction that you should use. So if you think of a bullseye, there's 3 circles, right? So on the outer circle, you want to talk about what's possible. And Justin, in the book, lays out 19 different methods for traction. And so one of them, it could be, we talk about email marketing, social media advertising, speaking events, search engine optimization. There's a million different things. He lays out 19 of the ones that he's seen to be most successful. And so on this outer ring of the bullseye, you take those 19 pieces, or however many you kind of come up with, for each one, even if you don't think it's going to work for you, you come up with one thing that if you're going to do, say email marketing, what would you do for email marketing? Just lay out a simple, couple sentence plan for each one of those. Or you're going to do a webinar. What is the theme of the webinar? Something like that. So you lay those out. And then the next step is the second circle of the bullseye. And so the first layer was what's possible. And now you want to go to what's probable. So of those, say 20 things that you laid out, now narrow it down to 3 or 4 things that you realistically think are probable. What do you think is going to be successful? And since you already determined what your goal is, whether it's 100,000 users to acquire or whatever it is, you know what that is. So what is probably going to get there? What of these growth engines could actually realistically get you to where you want to be? Now you take those 3 or 4 things and you want to lay out a cheap and easy way to test these assumptions, because they're assumptions. You don't know they're going to work. Again, it's all still in your head at this point. So say you wanted to, again, something I've been doing a lot recently is webinars, so I'm going to use that as the example. Say you think webinars can be a really, really good way for you to grow your business or to get new leads or lead generation or something like that. So you say, okay, how can I do this cheaply? Well, you want to set constraints. So you want to set a time restraint, an effort restraint or an energy restraint, and then a dollar constraint. So you could say, I'm going to run, webinars once a week, I'm not going to put more than like 2 hours into it once a week. I'm going to do this for a month, and I'm not going to spend more than $100 a week or $100 a month. You can do these things really cheaply. A lot of them you can even do for free. And so you narrow those down, and then the center of the bullseye is after you've run these 3 or 4 experiments, so it's what's possible, what's probable, now it's proving to be effective. And out of those 3 or 4 things, one of them is most likely going to be vastly outperforming everything else. So you take that one, and then that's the only one you focus on. It's very seductive to want to be like, okay, yeah, that one's doing great, but these other ones are still doing well. Like, why don't we still put it in? No. Don't focus on those right now. You stick with this one, and you milk it dry, and you drive that method home, and you really refine it until it's working as well as it can for you. And then oftentimes those things, it's not going to work forever, so usually you're going to have to adjust your growth engine or your method of traction. But you stick with that one method, you do it as best you can, and then when it's time to pivot or switch or try something new, then you can do that. All right, so looking across invisible walls. So there's probably one of my favorite business books ever. It's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. Has anybody read that? No? Okay, you should all read The Blue Ocean Strategy. It's really great, but an analogy that they use in that is, so imagine you're sitting with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you're thinking what you want to do on Friday night. So you're thinking, we could go to that was my voice crack, Justice. You knew it was going to happen. So, with your girlfriend, what are you going to do this weekend? Friday night. You go to the movies. You go to mini golf. You could go to a restaurant. You could go be little punks and run around the mall. There's all these different things that you could do. You have all these different options. And so you flip that and you see it from the movie theater standpoint. They're never thinking about what your other options are, at least across those different industries. All they're thinking about is competing with these other movie theaters. And chances are, the people that go to one movie theater aren't necessarily going to go to another one. It's more likely that their options aren't between you and another movie theater, it's between you and mini golf and restaurants, and people are just so blind to that. But by recognizing that, you can say, okay, instead of focusing on the customers of the movie theater, how can I appeal to non-customers of movies? Who aren't the moviegoers, and why aren't they the moviegoers, and why are they going to these other things instead? And so instead of trying to get a smaller and smaller piece of a shrinking pie, you're going outside of that pie and reaching into a different one, or you're growing that pie, whatever method of baking you want to use as your analogy for this. But looking at what across the industry lines, what you can do for those different things to bring people in. And that can be a really effective way to completely switch things up, because now you have this entire other market that's being marketed to through mini golf or whatever it is. And I might be running this analogy dry, but yeah, you can speak to them differently than everybody else because you're looking across these false barriers that all other companies just think we're competing in a vacuum, and it's movie theaters and nothing else. Well, people have choices. So understand those and see things from the consumer point of view, and it can open up a lot of new opportunities. And to go along with that, a lot of companies, especially in a particular sector, so say it's, online marketing. A lot of them are going to be, that's a terrible analogy, but people within a sector are usually using the same method to market and advertise. So say it's Facebook advertising, and everybody with an online course is doing it through Facebook advertising. Well, that's super saturated, and people on Facebook are getting just yelled at in this interruption marketing where they're getting all these pop-ups and ads about online courses, and it's overwhelming. So if you can find a way to do something that other people in your industry aren't doing, you're not fighting all these different battles, and you can set yourself apart. And so that's another thing to just think about while you're trying to gain traction. Does anybody know Paul Graham? He's a Y Combinator. So, you know him, Justice? So he talks about non-scalable activities. And this goes back to automation, people wanting to automate things. And they want everything to be scalable from the beginning. We're going to set this up so it can run and it works just as effectively for one person as it does for 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. But non-scalable activities would be like getting on the phone, like we talked about earlier, and talking with people, or going and doing speaking events, or meeting one-on-one with a customer. But figuring out what are these things that even if they're not going to scale, they're going to help you in the beginning to perfect your pitch, perfect what you're working on, refine your product, and get it out of your head and stop making it just for yourself, but make it for the people that are using it and the people that may want it if you just changed it a little bit. So, punctuated equilibrium. So when I was putting this talk together, I was telling Justice, I had all these different things I wanted to talk about, and all these different ideas, and there was like military theory and strategy, and John Boyd and John Adams, all these different things I wanted to talk about, and evolutionary psychology, and evolutionary biology, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but I think it's a cool thing, so I'm going to talk about it. So punctuated equilibrium is the idea in evolutionary theory that a species doesn't just, or some species don't evolve gradually. It's not just like a slow and steady evolution over like one gene mutation and things like that. There's these, for certain species, there's these punctuated equilibriums where something will happen and the species is forced to evolve very, very rapidly. And the same thing happens in startups. So rarely do you see a startup that just has like this slow and steady climb, like one step incrementally. It's usually they try a bunch of different things, try different methods of traction, and then they hit something that hits a nerve and it jumps up and they get a really big growth. And they do that and they suck it dry and it goes up and then it kind of flatlines and then they try something new and it spikes again. So it's this idea of punctuated equilibrium. So once you're able to hit on those nerves of what your traction methods are, you can really see something that's pretty cool. And so that's just a cool thing to keep in mind with how these things work. And it's not, you know, like you try a couple different things and they don't work and you get down on yourself. No, it's like you keep trying these things out, and when something doesn't work, like that's a good thing. You understand that doesn't work. You can try to figure out why that doesn't work and then move on from there. And then you hit something and you can see that works. It's great. So creativity through constraints. So again, when I was putting this talk together, I limited what I wanted to talk about down to one 4x6 note card. And having that constraint can give you freedom through the process. So we talked about it earlier, when you're running through, you want to run some tests on these different traction methods, and you put constraints on your time and your money and your effort. And because of that, you're forced to try interesting things. So one idea I actually have, you guys can let me know after if you think it's a good idea, but I work with people who do online courses, and I was thinking a cool thing to do would be, so many people try to, like, they let perfection be the enemy. They try to make everything perfect before they release it. And that used to be, you know, the way that things kind of needed to be done. Like in traditional businesses, you would build up towards this launch and make sure all of the pieces are perfect, and then you put it out there, and kind of if it doesn't work, you're kind of screwed. But the way things are now with technology and being able to change things and things being so cheap, that you can afford to throw something out there, you know, have it 80% of the way done, don't have to be a piece of crap, but it's kind of there, you put it out, you see how people respond to it, and you iterate upon it. Yeah, it's like the lean startup method that everybody knows about. But you iterate and you try new things, and so you can afford to do that now. But so many people still wait and try to get things perfect before they get moving. And one of my favorite authors, Robert Greene, he talks about starting before you're ready, and putting yourself out there and getting that feedback, and that's the only way you can learn and grow and scale your business. So having those constraints can be really effective. I didn't get to the idea that I wanted to throw out to you guys. So for these online courses, I was thinking a cool idea for constraints would be you, instead of having these people that spend 6 months putting together an online course, you put one together and the constraints would be like 72 hours, like a long weekend, spending less than $100, and like all of the outlining and creation and marketing and things like that has to be set up, and you do that all in a weekend. And I think that would be a great way to prove that these things can be done, that they don't have to be super time consuming and take 6 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together. And yeah, it's not going to be great. Of course it's not going to be great, but you can get that first iteration of it out the door, get feedback from people. They say, oh, this was a really great video. This one was crap. I didn't get anything out of it. I didn't even understand what you're talking about. And your voice kept cracking. So then you can re-record those, but you can iterate upon it and make it better, but not wait, because you just wait, you spend money, and you don't get any feedback out of it. So what's the point? Okay, now we can talk about some more tools and tactics that are more fun. Who want to take notes? This might be dead. Okay, so strikingly, is a great platform for putting together super sexy websites really, really easily.
Use it all the time.
It's like you don't need to be a designer or a programmer at all, and they make you look like a genius. For a while, I had my online portfolio built on Strikingly. I put it together in like 45 minutes, and I sent it to someone just like, "Wow, this is amazing! Like, who designed this for you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's right." But Strikingly, check it out if you need anything to like showcase anything or a product idea or just information. It's great. Next one is Espresso, which I've been using a lot recently, and it's great for running advertisements. Specifically through Facebook is what Espresso does, and the cool thing is, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about A/B testing. A/B testing. If you haven't heard of it, it's the idea that instead of running, one advertisement, you run two, and you change one element in them. So maybe you use a different picture in them, and then you see which one performs better, and then you stick with that, and then that becomes the new control, and you test new ads against that. Well, what Espresso does is instead of pitting one ad against one ad, it pits one ad against 250 other advertisements. And so you can plug in like 3 different headlines for the headline of the ad, 3 or 5 different pictures, and then 3 to 5 different body copies. And then it just randomizes everything and puts them together and runs them. And then you let that go for a week. I'd say probably more like a month to get something a little more statistically significant. But you do that, and then you've tested 250 different combinations of your ads. And so you're just able to go through that process of testing so much quicker, and it's automated, and it makes it a lot easier. And then you've gone through this process so many times, it becomes great. You get good feedback by it. They also have a really great dashboard that allows you to see how many impressions the ad got, what the frequency is, what your click-through is, the conversions. You can install conversion pixels to see, so are the people that click on this ad actually going and buying the product? See things like that. That really helps you measure, is it worth the spend of the advertisements that you're using? Next one is Perfect Audience. It's similar to Espresso. It's an advertising that allows you to do retargeting ads. So I'm sure if you guys don't know what those are, it's basically when you're shopping for whatever, shoes online, and then you don't buy them, but then you're on another website, a couple days later, you see those shoes pop up, and you're like, who's stalking me? That's what retargeting ads are. So Perfect Audience allows you to place a pixel on your own website, and then you can market and advertise to those people later. And I don't like doing it with specific products. I think that's kind of creepy. But if you're doing it with your website or inviting them to a free webinar, to read a blog post, things like that, I think that's less kind of intrusive and into their privacy and more just putting yourself out there so they can connect with you again. Programming for Marketers. This is a free online course for non-technical marketers, so people who are marketers but they don't really have any engineering experience or things like that. This is actually done by Justin Mayers, the guy who wrote the book Traction. This is a fantastic course. I think it's 7 days or something like that. You get an email twice a week now, so I think it's a month long. You get 2 emails a week, and it walks you through all these different things and helps you do these different technical tasks that normally an engineer would be able to do. But he parses it down and makes it so plain and simple, so you can do what's necessary without learning all of the things that a full-scale, full-stack engineer is going to be able to do to build an app. You're not going to be able to build an app taking this course, but you can adjust different things and do things that are really effective and only the things you need. And to go off that, Code Academy, this is something that I've been using recently. If you do want to become more technical and you want to learn, how to adjust different things on a website, you can do. Yes?
When you're learning how to code and you get stuck, what do you do? Who do you go to?
Usually go to Stack Overflow, and if that doesn't work, I'll reach out to Justice, and he'll help walk me through my coding problems. But I put off learning to code, and I wouldn't consider myself a coder by any stretch at this point, but I put it off for a long time, and then as soon as I started doing it, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Being able to not have to rely on somebody like Justice to help solve my problems. And I can go in and I can adjust the website, adjust the visuals, change little elements, and manipulate the data in such a way that it's I don't have to be brilliant at this, but if I understand what line in the code is making the button yellow and I can make it red, or I can change the copy a little bit, like really quickly without having to run to somebody else and throw them off their task. This is a great way to learn those things. And it's free, so take it. Lead pages. Lead pages is for testing landing pages. So that's something that I use a lot for whether it's inviting people to, right now I'm using it for webinars. You can create landing pages for things like that, for different products, for bringing people to events. They make them, again, really easy to design. You don't have to have any design experience. And you can implement them really quickly. You can host them on your own website. You can use them for like replays and for videos. Really great stuff. Pay with a tweet is another interesting service. And so if you offer anything free on your website, whether it's like an ebook or a free report or a PDF download or like a video series or things like that, a lot of people will do it. So it's like enter your email address and we'll send this to you. Another way you can do it is with this service called Pay with a Tweet. And the way it works is, as it sounds in the name, people can get your product, but only by sharing your website or whatever you decide you want them to share through their social media outlets, and you can choose LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or any of those things, but all they have to do is it takes them 15 seconds. They go in, they click, yeah, share this ebook with like my social network on Facebook. So they know like, hey, grab this free ebook, and then they get it. So it's low cost for them. I wouldn't say that's no cost because it goes back to social capital. You know, everything you do online, liking something online is not free. That costs people social capital. And if they put out something that's not cool and their friends don't like it and nobody likes it when they like it, you know, it makes them look weird. They're going to be hesitant next time they put something out. So those things aren't free, but it's a nice way to create a bit of a viral loop to help grow your product and help get it out there or your service through social media and leveraging other people's networks. King Sumo, started by the guys who run AppSumo. Noah Kagan, he was the 30th employee at Facebook. He ran the marketing at Mint, another huge website. Now there's a company called AppSumo. One of their products is called King Sumo. It's for running online contests and things like that. And the way it works, they have a pretty sophisticated system, and it would be something like you could give away an iPad. And the software costs maybe $200 for like a lifetime access, and you can find codes online to get it for like $100. And you can say you're going to give away an iPad, and people can share the link or like it, and then they get one entry into your contest. And then if they share it on social media or one of their friends likes it, then they get like 5 more entries. So it has this virality built into it. So the more somebody like leverages their networks and gets other people involved in it, the more entries they get into it and increases their chance of winning it. So I've seen people use this for anything from like small things to like a small, $20 giveaway or $50 gift certificate to iPads to like all the way up to like week-long vacations and trips like that and cruises. So these things can be really effective for growing your list and growing your customer base. Social media engagement. So being involved in online communities and being a part of like groups, whether it's on Facebook or it's in your niche, and you're not pitching your product, you're selling your product. You're there to actually give value free of charge with no real sales pitch. And obviously, like if it's super relevant to what you do and you think your product could actually help these people, by all means let them know. But that shouldn't be your sole focus. Your sole focus should be to connect with people and to add value and to see what people are talking about and to see what the trends are, to see where people are having trouble, to see, how they're engaging with your competition or the things they don't like about their competition or what they do like, but getting involved in these things and being a part of the conversation. Meetups, things like this. Going out, talking to people, meeting people, and actually putting yourself out there. So that's the end of my presentation. I have a list of books. If anybody wants them, you can email me, or you can just come ask me afterwards, and I'll hook you up. And happy to take any